Hello? Hello?
Hi, Peter. I can hear you. Hi, Jacob.
Hello.
So I didn't read your note that this was being rescheduled and moved until I'd been sitting in the parking lot for 10 minutes.
Oh no, Peter. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. It was one of those afternoons.
I hear that. Well, I'm glad you're here. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Garrett.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Have we heard anything from Doug? I don't see his picture there.
I saw him in the executive session Google Meet. I tried to say hi, but I don't think he heard me.
Okay. Is everyone home safe and sound?
Am now, as I said, I did not see the note that we
Oh,
had moved this until I'd been sitting in the parking lot for 10 minutes.
oh no. Sorry.
That's all right.
And Katie, wise decision to close, I think.
Yeah, it's looking pretty nasty for
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah. Have we got started? Have we opened the meeting yet? I'm sorry. I just left in the middle of the other one.
We have not. I think we're still waiting
Still
for
waiting. Okay.
for Coach.
Do we have a separate session for the executive session or what?
Yep, Jacob has sent
Okay.
out a separate invitation for the executive session.
Oh, okay. See it now.
So Peter, there's a Google Meet link
Yep,
for the executive session.
right. And how am I supposed to do this? Do I exit this and then go into the Google Meet when we get to that point or what?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Erika Schneider has her hand up. Just an FYI.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it sounds like you guys are waiting for Kevin. My understanding is that he has a 7 p.m. with the search consultants. So I don't know if what other folks know, and what I'm sure there are people more in the know about me than me, but that's what I know.
Not necessarily.
Wouldn't count on that, Erika.
First I heard of this.
Yeah, the search committee was going to meet at 7 p.m. tonight. And it was brought to the attention that that conflicted with the board meeting, but I'm not sure what came of that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Erika. So Coach probably will not be here. Should we go ahead and get
Sounds
started?
like yeah, it sounds like we have a quorum, at least for the moment.
Peter, would you
Uh,
like to run the meeting, please? Because my brain is scrambled right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. So, it is about 7:07 by my watch, as we're going to start the call together the Hartford Board of School Educators meeting for Wednesday, February 12th. For those of who are online, if anybody, in the public, the meeting was moved entirely to a Zoom meeting in order to allow some people to avoid the impending snowstorm and ice storm that we're supposed to be having. Does anybody have any additions, changes, edits, etc. to the proposed agenda?
I have one, Peter. We'd like to shift the triennial wellness policy review item to our next meeting.
Okay. I don't have any way to change that on this document. I don't. So remind me of that when we get to it.
Sure thing.
Anybody else have any other changes?
No, but Colin Butler has his hand up.
He does. Okay. Is there any way to allow him to speak? Mr. Butler?
He's muted.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
don't
okay.
have any access to controls, and
Am I, are you hearing me?
we are now.
Yes.
Okay. Could you folks please explain to me what's going on? I just got to the high school and was told that the meeting was remote. And I'm now back at home, and I think I see three of you. And I think I heard one of you say that you had just gotten out of an executive session.
No. Yep. Let me start from the scratch, since if you're confused, others may be as well. The meeting was changed from in-person to a Zoom meeting because of the inclement weather. The anticipation being that during the period of this meeting, it is supposed to get much, much worse. It was fine when I drove over there myself, because I didn't know about this.
So
But it is-
wouldn't you put something on the school board webpage indicating that it was not at the best room, which is what the webpage says?
That is probably not a bad idea.
We did put it out there. It was
Where?
put to the public with, I don't know if it missed the school board page or not, but it was put out around what, 3:30?
Well, if it's not on the school board page, how would I see it?
Colin, I'm sorry, we just missed that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my
It was a-
question about
ahead.
the executive session, did you just have an executive session?
No, we have not had an
No.
executive session. We were trying to figure out how the mechanics of it would work when we get to that point.
Okay,
We just had a call to order. We asked if anybody had any changes to the draft agenda. We were asked to move the triennial wellness policy review to the next meeting.
I heard that.
Okay, and we were about to ask, or I was about to ask for the motion to accept the agenda with that change. and we were about to go forward from that point. So we
Well,
haven't done anything yet.
One more question then before
Certainly.
you do that. You mentioned that Mr. Christie is not in this meeting because he's meeting with the committee that's doing a superintendent search. Who's meeting?
That is what somebody just told us.
Okay.
I had not heard that until literally it was announced.
There's no notice of that meeting on the district website. Is that the first meeting, or has this group already met?
There have been meetings in past years. I'm not sure.
No.
I don't know of any.
You just appointed this committee
Yes.
at your last meeting, I believe.
Right. So what I heard was was a meeting of the search firm. I
Not
did
the
not hear,
committee.
not the committee. So we have met with the search firm on occasions in the past. They
It's like
showed up.
Coach meeting, FYI.
Pardon?
What?
Coach just joined, it looks like.
Okay. I'm not seeing that, but
Okay, I'll take this up with you later tonight or some other time, but I'm a little bit concerned about how you're running this meeting and whether there is a meeting of that committee that hasn't been warned legally. So I'm done. Thanks.
okay. So
Kevin is online.
yes, Kevin is online. He is muted at the moment, though. Now, Kevin, Coach, can you hear us? Coach? I'm not hearing Coach. Coach? See if we can get him into the meeting before we proceed. Coach? You there? All right, well, evidently he may have a presence in some form, but not one that we can take advantage of. So, we have had a request that the Triennial Wellness Policy Review be removed from the agenda. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, not hearing anything. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as it is amended?
So move.
Second,
Second.
having been moved and seconded that we approve the amended agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Garrett, are you abstaining or are you just not able to get video? Or
I said aye.
oh, I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
No worries.
All right. The agenda having been passed, the first item on the agenda is an executive session. Can somebody make a motion to that we need an executive session and also that we go into such executive session?
I'm trying to pull up the exact wording. Sorry.
Yep.
Jacob sent it out.
Yes, it says executive session handout. It was sent out at 4:01 or so.
Right. Wow.
You able to find it?
Yeah, do I have to read this whole thing?
Uh,
The whole page?
no, just the portion that's relevant to this executive session, which is there's a language about me myself.
Student
I can
academic
count.
record suspension or discipline?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, so that's basically what I have to read. Tell me if I'm not reading enough. How's that? I move that we go into executive session for the reasons of V.S.A. 313A7, student academic records, suspension, or discipline.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having been moved and seconded that we move into an executive session, all those in favor, that there is a need for an executive session and that we should go into it. Is there, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nobody to say opposed. The motion has been passed. So let us go into the executive session. So I will exit out of this and join you on the Google call.
Okay.
I can figure out how to do that. This is clunky. Let's try this crap again here. Okay, that's that.
So there it is. Wait, what can? This is it.
Jacob, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I don't hear you.
I can hear Nancy. I heard Jacob say yes. Is this working?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, that at least is working. Coach, can you hear us? Can you?
Yes.
Okay, and you can speak too. It's even better.
Is it working now?
Yep.
You are on, yes.
Well, that's better than before.
Okay.
So
Nan-
I heard that whole interchange from Colin, and we'll have to address that. But with a little frustration.
Okay, well, don't know if he has a comment right now or not. Would you like to take over chairing the meeting?
You were doing fine. We can just keep moving forward. In case we lose the tech again, it seemed to drop on my end for some reason. So let's go ahead this way.
All right. So, to explain to the public, the executive session was called because, as had been the case previously, there was a request by a family to allow students to remain in our district without having to pay tuition. And in an abundance of caution, we went into the executive session to discuss whether or not there were any academic record suspensions or disciplinary actions associated with this request. There were not. So no actions taken during the executive session other to determine if there were factors that we needed to discuss in an executive session. So we do not have that particular item on the agenda, and I would suggest that we table going forward with that request until our next meeting, which way we can get it on the agenda, get it warned, and discuss it properly.
That makes sense. In order to keep, in tune with practice.
Okay, so we will have the discussion about whether or not those students should be allowed to attend our schools tuition free for the remainder of the year, when we can get it warned and put it before the public properly.
And just in preparation for that, any of the ancillary information that can be shared, such as if the tuition shuts down at the point where they leave Vermont or not, those types of administrative questions, so that we don't have to wait another meeting to get the answers.
Right. So that issue is We've done the investigation to find out whether there were any disciplinary issues or other private confidential issues, and we will table it until we can bring the arguments before the public. All right. That gets us to section 3, governance process. And first item on that agenda is the PCB update. Jonathan Garthwaite, who is our Director of Facilities, I believe, has a presentation on this issue.
Can you all hear me okay?
We
Yeah.
can.
You can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. I'll just launch in. The connection's a little clunky, but I'll just proceed. As you know, Vermont Act 74 passed in 2021 requires that all schools built or renovated before 1980 be tested, indoor air tested for the presence of PCBs. I'll do a real quick summary. I know this is familiar to most of you, but for the record, we had 3 schools that were identified by the state that required air testing. The first was the middle school. The process is a survey of the building materials in the school, followed by air testing, and then followed by bulk sampling if tests reveal a problem. At the middle school, we did the survey, we did air samples, and we came back with no measurable PCBs in the building, or at least nothing that triggered any action. We were far below acceptable levels. We did get some trace levels, which could just be background environmental, so no reason for concern there. However, as an abundance of caution, when we do the chimney replacement project next summer, we will have to do a survey for asbestos and lead and all that stuff pre-demolition. So we're just going to add PCB testing into that suite of samples just to kind of make sure we don't have anything that we're going to find later on. That will give us a kind of a cross section of the building from the roof to the basement, and we'll know what we have. But we had no air samples that required any action there and no reason for concern. At the White River Elementary was also identified as a school that needed to be tested. The state performed the survey last spring, and then the actual air sampling was stalled first in May, I believe, or June, for that lack of equipment, and then it was postponed for lack of funds. And the mandate was to have this testing done by July of this year. So you may recall the last time I spoke to this group, I said that we were going to go ahead and get independent pricing to proceed with that air sampling, which we have done. We have that. That pricing came in along with a work plan that has to be approved by the DEC. That work plan is with them. As soon as they approve it, and there's no reason they wouldn't, because they already have once. We'll go ahead and schedule that. When it is scheduled, we'll proceed and request reimbursement. What we find there is will be what it is. We'll do the air samples, and we'll now analyze the results and take whatever action is required. So that's White River. A quick aside on funding. Act 74 required the state to pay for all of the sampling and testing that was done, that needs to be done. That is still the case. It does not require payment for whatever remediation work is done. That we will have to recover either through the state or through an independent suit by way of Monsanto. But as far as the testing goes, that is the state is still on the hook for that. So we're going to pursue reimbursement there. At the high school and HHCTC, we did the survey. Is somebody trying to break in here?
No.
Okay. We did the survey complete, we did air sample complete, and we got a variety of results. In some areas, we had no cause for concern. In some areas, we had exceedances of what's called the school action level, which means there's no immediate hazard, but there is a likely presence of materials we'll have to remove. And then we had some areas that had the immediate action level, which means you need to vacate and deal with the problem right away. And we did exactly that. Those areas where we had immediate action level were in the northeast corner of the building, the culinary arts kitchen and dining room, 2 of the health sciences classroom, and then adjacent custodial hallway and some minor issues in the kitchen. We were able to vacate those academic spaces and take some remediation measures to make the kitchen fine to use, and we've been doing that with no problem. The other areas, we proceeded with bulk sampling to look at what materials are actually causing the presence of PCBs in the air. As a side note, and just kind of a word of comfort, we do have to do quarterly air testings throughout this process. We just finished 2 weeks ago our most recent round of quarterly air testings, and we're still in good shape. No changes. Nothing has gotten worse. All of the measures that we put in place are still valid. We are in a safe, reasonable holding pattern while we figure out what to do. So we did the bulk sampling and we learned what we face at the high school, and this is where it gets tricky. In the northeast corner, without going into great detail, I will just tell you it looks right now like to get the PCB contamination out of those spaces, we're essentially going to end up having to gut down to framing those classrooms and affected areas. The PCB bulk samples revealed that it is present in paint finishes, wall finishes, caulking, floor substrates, basically throughout the space. We also had school action levels, not immediate action levels, not a hazard, in the auditorium and the gymnasium. We also had school action levels in most of the B wing, which is the primary academic space in the high school. The level of remediation and abatement in those areas varies. We are still getting some details, and those will come quickly now because we're done with the testing phase. We're in analysis. But right now, I can say that, for instance, in the auditorium, the caulking that was used in expansion joints is going to have to be removed. And what that means is a fairly invasive, disruptive process where we put the whole place under negative pressure, clean it out, remove that material, replace that material, refinish as needed, and put everything back together. We have similar conditions in the gym. There is an open question about the substrate underneath the gym floor. We will find that out very quickly in the next couple of weeks. So knowing that, we've kind of grouped those into a phase 1 approach. Phase 2 approach would be, or phase 2 project would be the B wing, which is most of the academic classes on that side of the building. The culprits there, the sources of contamination, are also the flooring substrates. They are also finishes, caulking, glazing. I'm sure you're all familiar with those clear story windows, the windows between the hall and the classrooms on the B wing. The glazing in those windows is a problem. Of greatest concern is those window walls into the courtyard and then the exterior south wall facing the gym. The materials used to manufacture those window walls contain PCBs, and it is likely, very likely, that those window walls will need to be removed down to the framing of the building. So, big projects. Does anybody have any questions at that point?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
I'll
So,
do the obvious one, which is how much it's going to cost, but I'm assuming you're going to.
oh, I'll get there as soon as I can, Peter. So let me jump ahead a little bit. In talking with Caty and in talking a lot with Nelson and Erika, I think I have been spending a lot of time reading about how this was done at other schools, what happened in Burlington, what happened in North Country. And there are a couple drivers behind what we do. One is in other areas, the remediation and abatement projects and subsequent reconstruction were driven by the state, by the DEC deciding on how they wanted to approach abatement and remediation. And I think I can say with confidence and respect, it was largely an economic decision. I am not convinced, looking at kind of the after action report, that those economic decisions, although made in good faith, did not really result in any long-term savings. So we're going to turn this around, and we are going to approach this with the primary goal being to continuously support the academic and extracurricular programs and the experience of the students. So that means we are phasing this such that phase one will be remediation and reconstruction of that northeast corner. It's vacant already. We can start that essentially whenever we get approval. We would include in that phase one process whatever work we determine needs to be done in the auditorium and whatever work needs to be done in the gym. The reason for that approach is that if we do that and do that starting as soon as possible before the end of the school year, we could then pivot and use those spaces as swing space. It's not enough to do everything. We need to get very creative, and I will completely defer to Nelson and Erika and the administrators in that building on exactly how we do that. But the goal is to clean up those areas, put them back together in such a manner that we can leverage that space as well as the spaces that are exempt from this in the tech, upstairs in the library, in room 148, in the cafeteria, maybe even across the parking lot to the middle school. The goal being, when we start phase two in the B wing, we've relocated all of our academic activities, but we're keeping kids on the main campus, and we're keeping everybody home. We're keeping the administrators in their offices so people have a place to go for information and program support. It's a little tricky, but I believe in the end, not only is it the most cost-effective way to do it, because we're not relocating, we're not renting trailers, we're not putting kids in tents, but it also keeps everybody home. So phase one, I have requested a remediation and abatement plan from Fuss & O'Neill, which is the environmental consultant we've been working with. We have a decision point coming very quickly where tomorrow, in fact, we will need to decide whether we are going to ask them to produce a remediation and abatement plan that supports our overall plan, or whether we are going to follow the traditional path of them producing 3 options for cost comparison and presenting them to the state. Option 1 requires us to advocate very strongly for the district and ask for an exception. I believe that's the right path, and I believe that's what we're going to do. Once that is done, we will move very quickly to project planning, bring in an architect to work both on the interim occupancy plan. It will change the way we enter and exit the building. It will change where our fire lanes are while we work through this. While the work is going on, we will need to put our heads together and figure out how we leverage that phase one space to facilitate tackling the B wing. While that's going on, we have to start the planning process to consider, as we must, when we put the B wing back together, what's the right way to do that? There's nothing that says we have to put it back as it is today. If we need to take things apart, we should put them back with as much thought and foresight and planning as we can. That's a really quick overview. Not to be lost on this in this discussion is the fact that while this is all going on, we still need to replace the sprinkler system, the fire alarm system, and add another water line to the building to support the sprinkler system. We also have the north exterior stair drainage problem and stormwater to deal with. And all of these, as I said to someone recently, the Venn diagram of this on my desk is basically one big dense circle. Everything overlaps and touches everything. It's going to absolutely be a district wide project. We're going to need everybody's support. It's going to take a lot of bandwidth and a lot of resources. And just the final note, I'm getting back to your question, Peter. As far as payment goes, the state is still telling us that they are going to pay for all of the sampling, testing, and analysis. To date, we haven't seen that. Jacob can speak to that more. He has been on top of all of the necessary paperwork. My impression is that the state is, depending on a settlement from Monsanto, who created this monster. At the same time that's going on, the Superintendent Association has brought forth a suit against Monsanto to cover the costs of remediation, abatement, and reconstruction. So we are working on several fronts, one being the very practical planning of this effort, another being the relationship with the state and the constant communication negotiation to stay both in place in keeping with regulatory compliance, and also making sure that whatever subvention we are owed comes from them. And then the third is actively engaging in supporting the suit to recover the total costs. You know, from my desk, personally, professionally, I have spent a lot of time reading about how this has happened elsewhere. I've spent a lot of time talking to the different stakeholders in the district, and you know, I just rattled through that program like a simple thing. It's really a very complex project, and the only thing I can really say is that I believe we have a couple advantages. One, we have established a singularity of purpose, and I think the cooperation and the coordination is there to do this differently than other schools have done it. The other is we are much farther in front of the decision-making process than has been the norm. We are steering the process from the point of reconstruction and program support rather than just hazmat control. And I think that's a better place to be in. So I think if we have to do this, and we must, we have no choice, we have an opportunity to do it better than it's been done anywhere else. So questions?
Jonathan, I've got one question. So you'd said
Sure.
there's a lot of overlap going on with some of the, well, just between buildings and between some planned projects.
Yep.
Could this end up saving us any money on any of the bond related projects?
The short answer is yes. So for instance, in the B wing, right, we have to, it is very likely that we will have to remove the exterior walls, the flooring, and the ceiling tiles complete. When that happens, it will be exposed. We have to, in the next 18 months, identify the source of lead contamination. Everything will be exposed. That's the time to do it. We have to install a new sprinkler system and a new pathway for a new fire alarm system. That's the time to do it. I think it's not so much that I can quantify at this point a line item savings, but I think that if we plan this right, we can leverage the demolition that will be required for abatement and just pull that line item out of some of the other work. The trick is going to be in aligning all of the resources, getting all of the disparate bid processes and schedules to line up so that we can make that happen. So I don't think there's a $1-for-$1 offset, but I do think there's an opportunity to leverage the work we must do related to PCBs in a way that reduces the overall costs of those related projects. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. You said lead abatement. Were you meaning to say PCB abatement? Or
Oh no, we have so for a few years now we have been chasing the water issue.
Yes, and I wasn't sure if that was intersecting with this.
Yep, and again, we've done everything we need to do. We don't have any hazards in the building. Everything that was identified as a hazard has either been shut off, removed, or is labeled appropriately. We're in good standing with natural resources on that regard. And we also must find the source of that lead contamination that is existing.
Mhm.
Working on a couple different fronts to approach that. We are very fortunate that the folks we've been dealing with in natural resources have, you know, I got to give the nod to some of the maintenance guys who've done a lot of the work in, you know, we've changed out so many faucets and so many valves, and we've done so much work that we're actually in much better shape than anybody expected us to be. So we don't have the lead in the water is not a crisis or a hazard, but it has to be addressed, and this is the time to do it. I don't want to take on a project this big and leave anything behind.
Right. So, you obviously are way too early in the process to get a good handle on what potential costs would be. But can you do order of magnitude estimates as to what this would the existing bond, for example, be sufficient to cover this work? Are we going to need additional? I know you've talked about recovery from Monsanto, potentially funding by the state, etc. And while those are all possibilities, none of them are things that I would be willing to bet school district on. And even when you do win a lawsuit and recover monies, it is usually decades later. And while that would be wonderful in paying off the debt, it makes planning for its actual eventual happening a little harder because you just don't know if it will and when.
Well, let me speak to that in a couple ways and invite Caty to jump in, because you know Caty and I have been in touch with the law firm who's handling the suit, and there's a couple pieces there. As far as recovery from the state for the sampling, testing, and analysis, that's got to happen. That state is required to do that by Act 74. Unless they change the law, we are owed that reimbursement, and I don't think anyone is inclined to do that. So, you know, that is you know, a requirement. That is not to say, and you know, Jacob is probably rolling his eyes, but that's not to say it won't be an arduous process. But the state's required to reimburse us for all of that. You know, honestly, a couple of years ago, they would have paid directly to the environmental companies doing that work, would be paid directly by the state. That was turned on its head here, where the state is now reimbursing. Now, there's a couple pieces to that. One could say that puts the burden on us to pay, but I would counter that also puts us in charge of the process. And there's an advantage there. And as a very simple example in this, I mean, no, I don't mean to cast aspersions at anything, but our sampling and testing program at the high school was the plan and budget was approved by the state. The process was managed internally. We contracted individually, you know, we contracted as a district with Fuss and O'Neill. We required them to submit progress payments and itemized invoicing, which has not been the norm. We got through the testing, through the sampling and testing process, through bulk sampling. We're going to get the entire review tomorrow. We've received all the invoices in what I think is a remarkably timely manner. And it looks like we accomplished that for about $100,000 less than the reimbursement the state had approved. So we are in a very good position to say we're doing this well and request reimbursement. So that's a very positive piece to it. We have control. As far as the suit against Monsanto, the state has moved forward with a suit, which is interesting, to recover costs. The Superintendent Association has moved forward with a suit, which is more specific and lists the schools involved as claimants. So, and again, Caty, please jump in if I misspeak, but my understanding is, because we are kind of out in front of this process, we have a very well documented process. We have become something of a bellwether for that suit and are fast tracked to move forward with that within a year. I am not an attorney, but I have a hard time imagining that Monsanto Corporation would want to go to a jury trial in Vermont about an environmental issue. So I think we are actually in a good place to get a very positive settlement. Is that a fair statement, Caty?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also just want to state that Jonathan has done an incredible amount of research and really thorough job of looking at these other cases in the state so that we could be really proactive and learn from their experiences. So from day one, I consider us to be in a good position to learn from those other districts who've gone through this. And we've been in the capable hands of the lawyers who are working on this case and the Vermont Superintendents Association in order to, pursue this in a timely way and to have the case very much focused on those of us who have either experienced this or, in our case, are in the pipeline. So I think we are positioned well to have learned from those districts and to have the backing of the Vermont Superintendents Association, as well as the guidance of the legal team who's pursuing this on their behalf and on our behalf. So I just want to compliment Jonathan for the work that he's done in order to get us in the position that we're currently in. Certainly not ideal, but I think this approach of looking at this and considering the work that we were already doing, the work that we need to do, and what this is going to entail in terms of remediation and abatement, which is significant, is a really efficient and prudent way to go about it. And that has been from day one the approach.
No, I would not disagree with you at all. I am, however, concerned about what could happen in terms of when we would get reimbursement from whatever.
So
But
I can.
yes, go ahead, sir.
So a couple quick comments on that front. One of the, as I said, one of the advantages that we have that is, we're kind of the first people to be in this position where we are in control of the process.
Mhm.
So in terms of working with the state, and again, I have to impress upon people, the individuals I've worked with at the state level have been really great colleagues. The state systems may be a little clunky, but the people have been really helpful. So what we're going to be presenting them with is a plan that I can say with confidence represents the best interest of the students, faculty, and staff, represents the best advocacy for the taxpayers, and is the most cost-effective way to do this work. If some state entity objects, they're going to have to object to one of those three things, and I cannot imagine what manner of objection would hold. So I understand your concern about the process, but I do think we're in a good position. As far as funding the initial work, I think there is going to be kind of quote unquote out of pocket expenses. Jacob can speak to how that gets addressed up front. But the process as we move forward is going to be incremental. It's going to be, we're going to pay money for a plan, for an abatement plan and a remediation plan. We're going to put that work out to bid, just like any other project. We will examine the bids and we'll come up with the best option, whether it's a low bid, the middle bid, whatever it is, the most cost-effective way to do this. I don't think that we should, at this point, consider the facilities bond as the ultimate source of revenue to fund this project. I think we should stay the course.
Mhm.
I think that there is an opportunity, as I said, to save money on the bond. There's also opportunity, some of those bond projects, for instance, the fire alarm system, if we're going to take the ceiling down to do that, we're going to leverage those
Infinitely
dollars.
cheaper, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I in my other hat, I have to do with data cabling for DHMC, things like that. And it's a whole lot easier to do that while the ceiling's down.
Peter, I'm listening.
So I think, the expenses are going to come. I am determined not, we have yet to be surprised by anything here. It's difficult, but we're not surprised. And I am determined to get us through this process without being taken by surprise. So I can't tell you right now what the total cost will be, but I can reassure you that we will not incur costs before we understand them. And we will have the time. We're ahead of this. We'll have the time to consider wisely how to address those costs.
Right. Does anybody else?
If I may.
Yeah.
In preparation for the possibility, I think it might be prudent to at least see what might be required, if necessary, to do other adjustments, to the bond project, as it exists, and checking on the process to legally do that if necessary. I do understand the controls because it's a very functional based system. So each step will cost X. It has to be charted and identified and applied, to each individual item and aspect. So that part of the control I understand, Jonathan. But if the need did arise, in the final analysis, that a subset needed additional funds and we were really close within the framework of the bond, what would the applicability be for utilizing that legally? And I have a feeling, what it is, but I'd like to hear from legal counsel, the what if.
Coach, the only thing I would interject is, while this is going on, everything I just discussed, there's a couple other things. We get bored, so we keep our plates busy. We also have the roofing projects at Ottaquiche and Dothan Brook that are in planning and still on schedule to happen. The first phase of those to happen next week. We still have the chimney being replaced at the middle school. We still have the elevator being replaced at the middle school. We still have a drainage problem at Ottaquiche. We've got $250,000 of exterior doors to replace in the next 12 months. So all of that work is still happening. Yeah.
No. I got you. This is a legal analysis. It isn't necessarily one that, precludes anything. You know what I'm saying?
I guess what I want to make sure folks understand, I'm sure you do, but I want to just say it so folks understand that bond, we're actively spending that money because that's the mandate. So we have to be mindful of that when we think about, could we change the use? If we're going to do that, we have a kind of an enterprise level set of decisions to make, a district-wide set of decisions to make about priorities. And
that's
actually do that.
that piece I understand as well. It's just covering every possible contingency. As we're moving forward, because I know you've got everything lined up. I see those pieces of paper flying. Especially the ones that have required, prepayments.
Mhm.
So, anyways, it, it I I would like to say, kudos on the work, like thus far, and the approach, uh, is stellar, because it is utilizing information that I think some of our colleagues might not have, and they might not have had at the time they were engaging in the process. So, I think you're clearly on the right path for our district.
So a quick stop for a housekeeping element. Jacob, I see that Doug Heavysides has not joined us after the executive session. Do you have his telephone number? No? Could somebody try to reach out to him and see if we
Let's see
can,
if I've got it.
yeah. If not, I can send it to you if because these are conversations he ought to be able to take part in if he can get his computer to work.
All right, Peter, I have his number. Do you want me to call him?
If you would, just to see whether or not he is planning to join us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Um,
Doug? Hi, it's Nancy. We were just wondering if you were going to join us back in the regular meeting. You can't get in. He can't get in. Hold on.
They might not have seen his hand up or saw him join. And Mike should see and understand who he is.
Is he Douglas in the list of attendees?
I see that.
Yes,
So it just needs to be changed over to
a panelist.
a panelist, right?
Yes.
And so how do we get a hold of Mike?
Well, Mike should be online with
I just
us.
promoted him to a panelist if he would accept.
Okay, go for it. Okay, super. Do that then, okay?
I see him as a panelist now.
You're up here on the screen as a panelist now. See if you can unmute yourself. I sympathize, I do.
all right. Well, Doug struggles with the technology. Does anybody have any questions for Jonathan?
Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, yeah, hold on.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear him?
Yes.
Yes. So does he
Okay.
need to hang up his phone now? Or stay
can
on the
hear me?
phone? Yes, they
They
said
can
they
hear me.
could hear you.
Because I can't hear me.
Doug has said he can't hear any of us.
We may be hearing him over your phone. I'm not sure.
Mm.
Now I heard Peter.
Okay. No, it sounds like you're coming in.
What?
Doug,
Doug,
we
say
can hear
something
you.
now.
What about now?
That's coming over my computer now, not
Yeah.
over my phone. So does that mean he's hooked up?
Sounds like it.
Yes, should
Okay,
be.
let's hang up the phone and see what happens. Okay,
All right. Call,
All right.
call me back. if it don't.
okay, I will. All right, bye. Now let's see if he stays there.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So Doug,
I have no sound from you.
we can hear you.
Can you hear us now, Doug?
Mm,
We've lost him again.
Just muted himself. Muted himself.
You've muted yourself, Doug.
Thank you for your patience, Jonathan.
No problem.
It's better to have all the school board members in if we can do so.
Doug, can you hear us?
He has muted himself, or somebody has muted him.
Mike, can you unmute Doug?
Oh, there. All right.
Get me to call him back and just use my phone?
I have a feeling that Coach, who is also muted, is on the phone with him right at the
Oh,
moment.
okay.
So, do you have any questions for Jonathan at this point?
I do not.
Okay. Garrett, do you have any questions?
Nope.
All right. Coach, do you have any additional questions?
no, I'm good, Jonathan.
All right.
Great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right. Then I am going to move us on to the next issue. I was hoping that we'd get a chance to have Doug ask any questions he might have, but I am quite sure we will revisit this issue multiple times in the future. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I truly
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. Next issue on the agenda is the calendar for the school year 25-26.
Great, thank you. Mike, I wonder if you could make Erika Schneider a panelist. I'm thinking it might make the most sense for her to be able to share her screen to see the most final version of the calendar to date. Hi, Erika. So Erika, I'm hoping you might be able to share your screen and we can just talk over the calendar with everyone.
Yep, I have it open, but I am not seeing, oh, I see it. Okay. One sec.
Great, we can see your screen.
Can you guys see the calendar?
We can't see the calendar. We can see one of your tabs, but it's not the calendar.
Seems to be a deadlines document.
There we go.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll begin if that sounds good to you, Erika, and then you can add anything that I miss. So this calendar is a more final draft of the calendar that we shared with you previously. We had discussed that in broad strokes, some of the major changes for this next year would be that the Southeast regional superintendents came together. And this was really provoked by CTE directors around the state to align our February and April breaks. As we, I think, are pretty well aware, those have been out of line between the North and South for quite some time. So there was a push on our end to move our February break to the last week in February to align with the central and north part of the state, and to move the April break a week later to do the same. And this will allow for less conflicts among our career and technical centers and among our public schools in the state. So those changes have been made, and our desire in bringing this calendar tonight is to show you the more finalized version of this so that we can have it approved and be able to send it to all of our sending schools so that they know where we are in terms of our schedule. So that change you can see reflected in here, the changes to those breaks. What you're also going to see is that we heard feedback from the community about where our early release days were, and a desire for those days to be connected to a weekend so that childcare was better able to be secured for those days. We also brought the calendar to our administrative council for input from them about particularly those early release days and where those should be placed. And where we landed is that the early release days we have shifted to Mondays. And those are once a month. And we also had to meet with butlers as well so that we could figure out transportation, because what we decided to do is to actually have a late start on Mondays. So those days are once a month. And they will be a late start since Butlers has been able to make that happen for us. So that would be a change for next year as well. You can also see, in terms of a little bit more granularity, that we had to make a decision, much as other districts do when they place their February break in the last week, about what to do with that Monday and Tuesday that's attached to the break on the other end, because town meeting day is that Tuesday. And as you're all well aware, we host voting for town meeting day and have typically not had students on campus as a result. And so as an administrative council, we thought it would be wise to do as many other districts do and extend that break through that Tuesday and resume school on Wednesday to allow for some continuity and avoid the disjointing of having an in-service day there or having students back only to have the following day not in session. I believe those are the most significant changes that you'll see. You'll also see that we decided as a team that those 2 weeks for the holiday break were something that people really valued. We heard a lot about that from the community, and that we would maintain our Thanksgiving break as is, and in order to have the full 2 weeks for the holiday break. And I believe those were the most significant changes that were made in terms of getting granular since the last time we brought this forward. Would you add anything to that, Erika?
No, I think that's most of it.
So what we're looking for from you all is a review of this, any discussion and questions that you might have for us, and your hopeful approval on this so that we can bring it back to our sending schools.
Do any of the members of the board have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment or two. And I think you did it absolutely exactly what teachers and our parents have been saying to us for several years now. I think it's going to be very well received, and I think it's an excellent calendar. Thank you both very much.
Yes, thank you. As a parent, I like it. So
There you go.
As
my
a
only
parent with kids in another district, I like it too.
my only question, I guess, is around the February break. Like, I like the fact that it then, we don't come back until Wednesday to kind of account for town meeting day. My only, I guess, question would be impacts on, small businesses in the community that might depend on having, those 2 weeks of break. That's kind of an influx of business. I don't know if any business owners had weighed in one way or the other.
Well, I guess the question might be posed to Erika, with our business partners at the tech center that serve on different advisory committees and panels. They would have gotten access to the draft calendar, right?
Potentially. And I think, when we talk to businesses, the school calendar isn't usually the top thing that comes up. And I think we talk to businesses enough that if it was an issue, I would probably know. So for what that's worth.
And that's what I was getting at, because of the internships and things of that sort, they might be, just, curious when the students are available for different activities and things of that sort as well.
We talked about that too as a superintendency, as a Southeast superintendency. And one of the things that we found to be really valuable about this is that businesses will be able to expect this statewide now. And that is a really huge benefit for everybody, to rely on that and have it be a statewide effort. Was something that I know the superintendents who had discussed this with local businesses were getting a lot of positive feedback on that.
Okay, great.
Cool.
I make a motion that we accept it as is.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion having been made to accept the draft calendar for the 2025-2026 school year and having been seconded, any further discussion? Hearing nothing, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's a passage, so with Doug unable to participate. Thank you very much for all your effort. This has got to be one of the most thankless jobs that any group of people ever have to do. No matter what you do, you are going to annoy somebody. And it's all you can try to do is reduce the level of annoyance to a dull roar.
Thank you. I think we really tried to respond to the feedback we heard, and I just want to especially thank Erika for really applying her mathematical brain to this to make sure we have all the days there as well. So thank you, Erika, for your efforts on this as well.
All right, moving to the next issue on our agenda. Student representation on the Hartford School District Board of School Directors.
I'm happy to introduce this topic. We have had interest expressed from a student at Hartford High School to be a representative on the school board, and the student is prepared tonight to present to you all their desire to serve on the board and answer any questions you might have.
How widely have we made this idea known. The reason I've questioned I've seen at least 2 different inquiries about serving on the board,
Yeah.
and I don't want to want to make sure that everybody who's interested actually has a chance to apply.
Right. My understanding is the board can choose to take whatever action you'd like after hearing the student presentation. So
Okay.
we wanted to put the presentation on the agenda and you can take it from there.
All right. What is the
So we're
pleasure?
gonna- Sorry,
Mm.
Peter. Are we gonna invite both of them to do the presentations at the same meeting?
Well, we have one student prepared tonight, and again, we can open it up or do whatever the board chooses to do after hearing from this student. And
Okay.
we can, have another presentation on a future agenda, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay, thank you.
So it's been past practice that we have had up to 2 students, on the board. So it is the pleasure of the board to react or respond to this request and any other additional, requests.
All right, so I take it then that it's the pleasure of the board to receive this presentation. All right.
Yes.
Then certainly. Caty, if you would introduce the student and
Is Walker online and able to join us?
Yep, if you can hear me all right, I'm just going to give up my chair to a wiser mind and let them take it from here.
That sounds great. So this is Walker Garthwaite, and Walker is a grade 9 student at Hartford High School.
Hello. So I am unclear if the camera is working or not, but okay.
at the moment.
So I have had an interest in joining the school board as a student representative for a while now. And it's very important to me to connect the student body and the administration more, because in the past we have had a lot of issues with that in my years of schooling here at the Hartford School District. So I'm hoping to further be the voice for the student body.
Any questions from fellow board members? Ms. Russell?
Yes, of course. Hi, Walker.
Hi.
Nice to have met you. Thank you for wanting to serve with us. Have you had a chance to talk with anyone about what we would like for you to do as the school representative?
I have talked with Roy Hathorn
Okay,
about what past students have done in this position.
right.
It's very interesting to hear about.
Great. Okay, that's super. That's the only question I have, and Roy's the perfect one to ask. Oh, I do have one other.
Yes.
Sorry. Can you tell me if you're a junior or a senior?
I am actually a freshman at
A
Hartford.
freshman. Whoa, that's super. Love that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Other questions?
No question, just Walker, thank you for your willingness to do it. I feel like I will be able to be a better board member having a voice from the student body. So thank you for your
Absolutely.
willingness to do this.
Well, just a couple of pieces. Students that have participated on the board in the past, Walker, have taken different approaches to their work in service to their fellow students. Some, did regular surveys at the high school, working with their fellow students to bring questions back to the board. There was a paper that was written by one of our past student reps. We'll try to see if we can get a copy of it for you. But he did an incredible job putting together his experience, as a board member and some of the tools he used to get information from his colleagues and fellow students to bring back to the board. So if we can put our hands on a copy of that, that might be helpful as you move forward.
That would be really interesting for me to see, actually. I would enjoy that.
And then one of the, probably most notable alumna of board students is Senator Becca White.
That's right.
She was our first student rep, and now she's a senator. So
look out.
So we're excited. We're excited as a board to have your voice.
All right. Coach, do you wish to take over the gavel at this point, or?
No, you've got the helm, Peter.
All right. So we have been wanting somebody in this role for quite a while. We haven't actually had any conversations on the board level about exactly what the role will entail in this iteration of doing it. It has changed from time to time, largely based on the interest of the student. But it's also changed in part based on what we were trying to do. There have been suggestions in the past for such things as the superintendent being responsible for running a class, so the student who was serving on the board could get academic credit for serving on the board. I don't think we've got any such situation set up yet that might do that. So what thoughts do people have, including the superintendent, about how this time we would want to do it?
I think when we look back at the students that have been on representatives, your daughter was absolutely exemplary. She brought things to us. She wasn't afraid to speak up. And she did a great job. And the young man that Kevin was talking about also did an excellent job. And both did it a little bit differently. They did it on their style, but they brought us the information. I think for us to have a description, not a job description, but some kind of description so that they can know basically what they can do and what we need them to do. We need them
right
to be on this board. We haven't had one in a couple of years now, and I think it's been a real detriment to us. But I really think that the ones that we feel comfortable with and think that can do this job and can be advantageous to them to be able to do it. I mean, Becca's the perfect example. But I don't want them to step in there thinking that this is one way and then too late to find out that's not what they expected it might be, and then kind of turn them off and we lose that opportunity to have the voice of the students coming in with us. All right, I read it on. Somebody else.
Doug, were you trying to say something? I wasn't quite.
I was trying to say something. Yeah, you want me to try again?
No, actually not you, but Doug. It sounded like Doug was trying to say something.
Oh, Doug.
Yes, he's joined us.
Yeah, I heard him. He was trying.
Okay, it sounds like that he is incommunicado, even though there's a bit of a picture at the moment. Garrett, any thoughts? Anything you wish to address?
No, I mean, being a fairly new board member and not serving when a student served, I'd kind of rely on you guys to come up with a bit of a like you put it, a job description. But I mean, my thoughts would be fairly regular surveys of the student body, or just bringing issues from the student body to the board. I mean, it's been a long time since I was in high school, so it would be great to hear what's going on, what the students want. Yeah, so if we can kind of formalize that, I think that would be great.
All right. Coach, do you have anything further you wish to say?
No, I think we started it for all of the reasons that have been mentioned, but most importantly, for the opportunity for the student.
Right.
Because they've all done well, and we have been better for it.
So
But
let me ask the board, would there be any interest in asking that applicants write a short essay describing themselves, their experience, and why they would want to do it?
I think that would be a great idea. And I'll send whoever I've got two other names that students have sent to me.
All right.
That are showing an interest. And while we're on that, someone that is watching us at the moment. As far as may I read this to you, what they're asking, because they can't. I don't know if she's tried to be unmuted or she's having her problems anyway with the communication. And she says, as far as a student rep, I'm concerned about the daughter of an administrator being on the board. It's a potential conflict of interest. I am also concerned that this was not put out to students at either high school or middle school. As a parent and staff member, I get all the newsletters and the announcement. I mean, she has some other concerns, but while we were talking about this, she just sent it to me. So I just wanted to read what she wrote. Since I am one of those people that some people might think have a conflict of interest because of my serving on the board and also serving as a sub and having a daughter and as a teacher and a granddaughter as a a building sub. We don't think that we have a conflict of interest. I know that I've talked about this with the board before about Linda being a teacher and my being on the board. And to my knowledge, we have never had a conflict of interest. We've really kind of made it a policy not to get into that mud hole being there. So for me, I don't think there's a matter of a conflict. And for me, it doesn't make a conflict of interest for me. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, I think to answer the the parents' concern, about conflict, we need to clarify, for any of the applicants or parents that there's not a voting. This isn't a voting membership on money items, on contracts, or anything of that sort. And that's the unique nature, of that, experience, on the board, as a student.
And is that in fact, my memory is not as good as it might be on some of these issues. I had no, we had a conversation at one point about students having the right to vote. Originally, the representatives did not, and I was of the opinion that at that time that it actually provided some protection to the students.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I think that was actually voted that we would give the student voting rights. So we probably should go back and refresh our memories since it's been several years since it was relevant in any way. And but I think we should clarify that. Um, so process related, I had put forth the idea that you might ask for an essay. Are other people interested in that? Nancy has said she is.
I just think it's a really nice way for them to be able to express themselves without having to sit in front of a group of us old fogies here, minus Garrett and minus Jacob. But but it's a great for us, a great way for us to get to know them. And I think it makes it a little easier for them when, when we can say, oh, well, before the meeting starts and they come in and we go, oh, how did the soccer game go? Or, that kind of interaction with them to make them feel a little bit more at ease when they're setting up there with a board
Mhm.
of the
Right.
school board. I mean, member of the school board.
Does somebody wish to make a motion to
And
that?
in order to broaden this discussion, because in the past we had made requests to past superintendents to um put the clarion call out
Mhm.
for members. So in all fairness to um, the young students who may be interested, um, being that it's now a visible topic for the community, and I mean the whole school community uh, as a whole, um, can can we send um, something out, Caty, from your office on the board's behalf, requesting students who are interested in potentially serving on the board, please provide us with um, we can decide, like what, like a one-page max, um, dossier or introduction paragraph, what have you, to the board for that request for review. And we would review the candidates that at the next meeting or whatever we decide.
How many seats would be available?
Two.
Two.
We have alternated between 1 and 2. We wanted
Right.
to do 2. The hope had been that we would have a senior student and a rising student, and that
Exactly.
sort of pass through that, having continuity of experience. But that plan never got very far. Excuse me, my cat is trying to get attention.
Is it only open to high schoolers or is it open to middle schoolers as well?
Traditionally, it's only been open to high schoolers, but we were never really presented the option of a middle schooler doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I don't know that we've ever answered that question.
I just figured if we're gonna put something out to the community just to, make sure there's some guidelines.
Yeah.
The downside, just so everybody is aware, is that it is a significant time soak.
Yes.
and can go very late in the evening. And this has sometimes been an issue. So I'm feeling somewhat constrained by my position as temporary moderator of this group, but I would like to propose that we try to formalize this just a little bit more, and that we request that the superintendent, as was suggested by Coach, put out an announcement to the district that as part of the application process, we ask for a short essay describing the applicant, them describing themselves, explaining some of their school experiences and what they would hope to accomplish on the board. Does anybody wanted to make a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Second.
All right.
May I ask a question of clarification, please?
Certainly.
What are we deciding as far as, is this announcement and is this opportunity open to middle and high school students or high school students only?
Does the board have any thoughts on that? I have no objections other than, as I said, it can be a significant time suck and go fairly late. And high school students have, in my opinion, a little better chance of dealing with it. But I'm not really having a huge feeling either way. I'm sort of thinking that if we were to see who applied, we could make a decision at that point if we needed to. Though it might be unfair to any junior high students or middle school students if we were to say no after they had gone to all that trouble. So I don't know.
Jeremy Warren has his hand up as well.
Before we lock into that, let's hear a little public comment. Because this the parents on the call have expressed a few comments so far, and Nancy has gotten a few too as well. So,
And she would like to be recognized too. I told her to raise her hand.
yeah.
You all hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, my concern here really is just that it is time consuming. And really my issue is the safety for the student. I commend Walker for being willing to step up here. I completely support the essay approach. I do think that we should announce it definitely the high school. My concern with it being offered at the middle school is just from the protection of the student's perspective. And I really think that, Walker's great, and I think they are coming from the right approach. They are the only person that has stepped up and has been willing to step up, and I think that's huge. I think we should open it up to the schools, reach out to the advisories, and see if there's any other students that are willing to, take this opportunity and be the voice of the students. I'm concerned with giving them a vote. Just does that open them up to any judicial issues later on with open meeting laws? That would be my only concern, is I would want to protect our students first and foremost. That's the only thing. I would be open to listen to all of their thoughts and their survey results. But first and foremost, I would want to make sure the students protected.
Right. That protection aspect was the issue why I was not in favor of having the student representative vote.
Right.
My daughter actually received a certain amount of a less than pleasant interaction with the community on occasion. And she was not voting at the time and had no direct impact on the outcome of events other than commenting and so forth, and still received occasional less than pleasant comments about how things had turned out. And so I think protection of the student is important. I would agree.
Yeah, I just don't think that I don't think a public email address would be suitable for this.
Mhm.
I just don't want to open them up to that possibility. And Peter, and I'm sorry, I'm a former student and recent re-inhabitant of Hartford, and the fact that your daughter had to put up with that is not acceptable.
Yes. No. She's tough, and she did a very good job, I thought.
You did an excellent job.
Good.
I'm also very biased.
Me too.
Always.
Because she did a great job.
So I think we need to go back and look at the history and figure out what we had decided with respect to voting on the students, because I think we may have decided that that was something we were going to do going forward.
Right.
But I'm not sure if I'm confusing different positions where students have been involved, and I want to make sure we get that right. But in the meantime, we have had a motion to request the superintendent to promote this. It sounds like we would like it promoted. Actually, let me ask. Do we want it limited just to the high school students or to junior high and high school students?
I mean, I think it makes sense to keep it in the high school. I was just asking if
too.
it had been offered to the middle school.
Right.
Zach Scott has his hand up as well.
Okay.
High school would be.
Good evening. I'm Zach Scott, Hartford resident. Just wondering how the board, if Peter is suggesting that they already have, how the board, who are elected officials, gave away an electoral vote to an unelected official.
No, we had not. It was part of a discussion during this last 14 years or so of utilization of student members on the board. Because it has come up in the past.
And I can't quite frankly remember how we came out in the ultimate.
Well, as I recall, they didn't have a vote.
Okay.
Right.
Having proctored the or moderated the meetings.
Okay. Well, then I will gladly take the answer I was preferring.
Because as I recall, you were you were one of the strong voices for that being one of the ways to protect the students as well. If that helps, Zach.
All right. So any further discussion on this motion? All right, Caty, have we sufficiently answered your questions?
Yep. Yeah, I think I've got the right direction. I guess actually one more question would be what the timeline should look like. We're expected to meet next on March 12th, and I'd love some direction as to what progress should be made by that time.
Well, that would be a perfect time because that would be the reorganization meeting anyways. So that wouldn't be a bad time to reorganize, here, the information would be in the packets. So we'd be able to make a decision that night. So that would make sense to me. If it makes sense to the other board members.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. So I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor of directing the superintendent to invite participants, students in the high school to apply for a position as a student board member and request that interested students submit a essay describing themselves, their interest in the board, and what they would like to do on the board. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And did
If, if Doug can hear us, he might be able to raise your hand, Doug.
do not see him?
So he lost his
I think his
audio.
picture's frozen too.
Right. And Garrett, I'm sorry, can you indicate which way you voted? I didn't hear you. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Yep. So it sounds like we have an agreement there that
Yep.
we're going to do that. All right. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you stepping forward and getting this process going.
Thanks, Walker.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, actually, to present my willingness to do this.
We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing your essay.
Yes. I'm very excited.
All right. We have a HCOREI issue. Who is presenting on that? New applicant to the committee?
Yes, we have a new applicant for the committee. Her name is Jasmine Hawkins. I've met her several times and have had conversations with her. Joe Major had to step down for obvious reasons. And she has attended a number of our meetings and is very excited about becoming more involved in our community. She works at the V.A. hospital. She is an outstanding young woman, and I highly recommend her to be able to, for her to join the HCOREI committee.
I'm having hard time seeing who is and isn't online. Is she online?
I do not see her name.
All right. Does the board wish to extend an invitation to her to come and speak to us?
Well,
or
I think, did she have an application, Nancy, submitted
If she has
to the
it, Pat
town?
has it.
If it was sent to the town, remember it's a shared member.
Yes, I know. Yeah, Pat was gonna take care of that.
Okay.
He was gonna make sure that she had all the right information. I didn't watch the last select board meeting, so I don't know if they brought it up to them at that point or if it's at the next meeting. I'll try to find out. Well, I can find out. Pat's out of town right now. But yes, we explained all that to her.
All right.
Okay.
So I think it would be appropriate if we got the application form and then if she would speak.
And come and talk to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You got it.
All right. And does somebody wish to make a formal note of appreciation for Joe Major's work on the committee? I notice it's one of the items.
You know, I think that because he had been a long-serving member, both as a select board member and as a community member to HCOREI on our behalf, that a statement plaque would be very appropriate because it's been a lot of extra work. And I know that he was involved with the Juneteenth celebrations and other celebrations that were put on, like by the committee. And they should be recognized.
I agree.
All right. Somebody wish to make a motion on that degree? Effect?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All right. By the way, I'm totally in support of this. I have been very impressed by his level of service to the community, and also think he's a charming gentleman. That's worth. All in favor of putting together a plaque to present to Joe Major on behalf of the school board, reflecting our appreciation for his service.
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. The next issue I am remembering was asked to be removed from the agenda. So we will not discuss the Triennial Wellness Policy Review. That will be put on the agenda of a following meeting, which leads us to the biggest issue of the night, potentially the governor's education plan. It says overview by board chair and clerk. I assume that this means Coach, you and
I'll give you my short version.
all
You know,
right.
that doesn't happen often. So I spent 3 hours in a meeting yesterday dealing with this very thing. With V.S.A, with the all the other V things that and with a couple of people from Congress, from the House and the Senate. There's so much going on and there is so many changes happening so quickly that by the time that I can sit here and tell you about what we discussed even the 2 hours before I joined this meeting, which was painful. There's just so much going on. I think that I already sent you all the V.S.A.'s response to Governor Scott. We're sticking with that as the V.S.A, the group of us that are working together with other people, with the other people that are involved in this. We have a work plan that involves 4 pages. It kind of looks, I can't do this. I can't share. Anyway, there's a lot of things that involved the criteria, the vision, the funding, the equity, the implementation timeline, or the feasibility, educational governance, student outcomes and learning experience, community and interested people, impact for school board members, and governance. So what we did today, what we did yesterday and today, we sat down and we took each one of these and we said, what's in his plan that we agree with in any of these sections here? And then what do we not agree with? And then is there things that we can come together and work together and still get the goals accomplished? The main thing is that most of the boards in the state of Vermont have very little to agree with. They agree, yeah, we need a new funding process, but we don't have enough information. We don't have enough details to decide whether it's going to work. And I was going to ask Jacob if he could, in his spare time, if he could do a comparison using what the governor is suggesting as how that how the new funding is going to take place, how that's going to affect our budget now, and how it's going to affect our staff and our students. The main thing that most of us are really are concerned about is how it's going to affect the students, and where's the money coming from? There's so many questions out there and so few answers that are being brought to us, but they meet like on a daily basis. We're meeting just about on a daily basis, anywhere between 2 to 4 hours. I've spent 4.5 hours on it just today. And we don't have the answers yet. And every time we think that we might have a solution or a compromise, then something is thrown at us and it's changed. So that's basically it. That's about as much as I can report because it changes so quickly. And so much of it, especially the smaller districts like us, are concerned about how it's going to affect our students and how in the world are they going to have 5 regions and have people that are going to be working part-time as school board members. Where does that leave us? How does that leave us with our community? And are we going to be heard? So there's just a lot of questions left out there, and I will get you as many answers as I can. And I know I shipped you a bunch of stuff this afternoon, but I got it as soon as I got it. So you can use it for bedtime reading tonight. And but it is serious and it's a lot to think about. Again, if there's any documents that you need that you feel like could help answer your questions, or if you have questions that I can bring before this other group, please let me know.
Right.
Because that's what we're doing right now, asking a lot of questions.
So,
Kevin, your turn.
Well, in my other role, we have the dubious honor of trying to figure out what this all means in every way. And when I say that, very similar to what Nancy brought up, what is the new funding formula going to look like? And I think for everyone, that's a key question. And then how is that going to affect our ability as school board members to support our students regardless of the size of the district? And how do we input, that support or not, for the students? His plan also spoke to removing the lunch programs, and the data shows that we have better student performance, better classroom management when kids are at least reasonably fed. And from a development perspective, and either from our sports medicine side, being Garrett's side, and then from the educator side, we know that students need that nutriment in order to succeed, each day. So taking that away when we've made it a very important focus, here in our state, is, that's a struggle. for every, every legislator. Um, and then going back to the tax structure, um, we haven't gotten word yet, if they're looking at the possibility of using income, or a combination of income, and property. That's been a discussion for years, and yet it hasn't been, technically approached. Um, and from a legislative perspective, we haven't heard yet from our specialist, being Jacob and his counterparts, that actually are responsible for the spending that we do as, you know, taxpayers and board members for all of our children, all 83,000 of them. So there's just a lot of unanswered questions, and that's not to say that people are just waiting, you know, like Nancy said, with sitting on their hands. There's a lot of subcommittees. There's discussions going on every day at the State House, you know, and they were just finishing up, another block of discussions, on the way out, this evening. Another committee was meeting at 6. I mean, this has been all hands on deck. People just, trying to, see the feasibility, I think would be the best adjective. So that's it. There's Caty has a brief video that was put together that does a reasonable description of the governor's plan, for those that are on the call that would like to see it presented in a capsulized version.
Yeah, the video was sent out in my newsletter. I'm just wondering from Mike, like the best way to do this, to share it online with everyone. Is it maybe to have one of us share our screens and share it? Is that the best approach?
I mean, I think you should be able to share your screen and play the video. It should go through.
Yeah, it should.
Okay, let me try to do that.
No, we're waiting for a video.
While we're waiting.
Caty, it's Mike. I'm also remote because of the weather, so I can talk. But if you're sharing a video with sound, I just know there's a setting.
Yeah, because we're on Zoom, I don't have downloaded what I need to have downloaded in order to share my screen. I can do it on Google Meet, but I can't do it on Zoom.
Can you get it posted to our webpage?
It's in the district newsletter I sent out. I can
Katie,
have it.
I'll try and share it. I think I can do it.
Okay.
administration officials unveiled Governor Phil Scott's big plan for education reform on Wednesday. Here are the highlights. First, Scott basically wants to flip how we pay for schools instead. Currently, local voters decide how much schools should spend and whatever amount they approve, the state pays. Scott wants a foundation formula where the state would decide how much school districts should get. This would be a per pupil formula with adjustments based on student need. Officials argued that what we have right now is really expensive, doesn't direct funding where it's most needed, and is way too complex. Second, Scott wants to consolidate the 119 school districts that we have right now into 5 regional entities, with 1 school board and 1 central office apiece. And third, he wants to centralize a lot more power into the hands of the Agency of Education, which would set statewide standards for things like graduation requirements and the statewide calendar. Those standards would also dictate which schools should stay open. This takes control. But Education Secretary Zoe Saunders said she's heard from folks who say they want the state to make some of these tougher calls.
What we see a lot of times is districts are working to think intentionally around how they can consolidate to provide different resources for students, but they often tell us that they lack cover from the state to be able to make those important decisions.
Right now, this is just an abstract plan. We're still awaiting key details. And of course, the legislature will have its say. To follow our ongoing coverage, head to vermontpublic.org.
Thanks, Caty.
And all of those materials are available with the links on our webpage.
Okay. I have to say that personally, the immediate issue that comes to my mind with respect to this is topography.
It's what?
Topography. Vermont is a state that is wrinkled. We are covered with mountains and valleys, and you can be 10 miles away from another location and an hour away by any form of transportation except for a jetpack or a helicopter. And when you combine that, which is the reason that historically Vermont has so many school districts. In fact, if you go back to the early days, there were basically a school district for every individual school, which it was the size that you could walk to the school. And they were there. We have gone through multiple rounds of consolidation, which I think is appropriate. The last attempt was about 15 years ago or so. And I have actually talked approvingly of the idea that consolidation might be a good thing under the right circumstances. But if you have a district that literally goes from the interchange at 91 and 89 all the way down to the Massachusetts border, you have into some very interesting questions about who's going to be transported where and how far and for how long. And I don't know that those are easily solvable by any kind of way except having some very serious conversations on where you locate schools and how many of them there are and so forth. So all of these details, none of which are minor, are the ones that immediately come to my mind. So I have way more questions than I have answers.
Yeah, I mean, I have all sorts of questions. I mean, and just a comment. I mean, I guess I'm wildly disappointed that they put out something like this to the state of Vermont and didn't seem to have more details hashed out or more questions ready to be answered. I don't understand that at all. I would at least think that you might take numbers from previous years to try to model it and show everybody what it might look like and if it makes sense. And I think my questions are what probably a bunch of other people have. How is this supposed to make education better for our kids?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the biggest one. The other one is
Exactly.
what happens to all the teachers in the schools that gets closed.
Yep.
And then what happens to all the bus routes, kind of as Peter mentioned, Vermont has wrinkles and you can't get there from here sometimes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then I guess which schools stay open, which schools become, those regional high schools, how many of those are there going to be in each region? Is there only going to be one? I, I don't know. I think we all have mountains of questions, and I don't know, wildly disappointed that
Yeah.
that's how it was handled.
The governor's presentation contained lots of information about the ways in which the current system is questionable, is not meeting the needs of students, is expensive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in no way did he tie his new plan to solving any of those.
You're right.
Oh, my other question is, how is this supposed to, the other goal is to lower taxes for middle-class Vermonters, so how is it going to do that as
Yeah.
well? Which I'm assuming it's going to do that by cutting so many positions from closing schools, but that's just an assumption. I don't know. So,
You see, that's the assumption. That's the problem.
One of the things that I think, and V.S.A and the other these are telling people to contact your local representatives. Ask them the questions. Ask them the hard questions. Not a yes or no question, but ask them some hard questions, some concerns. Tell them the concerns you have. Because in the end, they're going to be making the decision.
Right.
There are a few things that came from the superintendents. When we got together to discuss this, we heard more from the secretary and the deputy secretary the day after the proposal was laid out for the legislature. And one thing that I offered up as a comment when we met with them was that what I was disappointed by was that the Commission of the Future of Public Education was formed. They've met a lot over these past months. And what I was hoping to see was that in that brain trust, and I know some of the individuals who are on that commission, and they are fabulous and really talented and intelligent educators, that was an opportunity to form a vision, to work backward from for what we want for our students. And what I'm concerned about and shared with my superintendent colleagues is that this isn't about planning backward from a vision. This is about cost containment.
Yep.
And that's unfortunate because that's not centering our students in the work. And that commission, I think, would have been a really good place to do that. And then there were just a couple of other things. We've seen healthcare increase, by 16% last year, 12% this year, and there's no solution, to that issue either in terms of cutting down costs. And just this idea of school choice expansion is really troubling superintendents in the region and statewide, as well as, no firm answers as to, the increasing AOE capacity to even support these efforts to consolidate and to re-envision what this would look like. So those were some of the things that came from the Superintendents Association in reviewing this plan as well.
All right. Any further comments at this point? We're obviously not at a point where we can take any action.
No.
So any further comments?
I'd seen somebody had their hand up. Oh,
It was Erika. It was Erika.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Colin's
Eric.
hand is up too.
Yep.
So let's go with Erika first and then Colin Butler second. We can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yay, it worked. Thanks everyone for being, it's very late. Again, also Hartford, Erika Fallon, Hartford resident, a lot of questions, but I'll stick with just a few for now because I know everyone's sort of working on having answers and no one has any answers. I just want to say that as a resident of the town of Hartford and a Vermont resident with 5 kids, the universal lunch is very, very important to my family, to just my idea of what I want for a community and a state to support. I know we aren't taking real action on anything right now, but I just wanted to express that I feel like it is really important, and that whatever we do, we try to secure that as a something we continue with. My other question is, in all of the plans I saw out, I didn't see anything to address building costs. Like, we still have to house students, and the state doesn't seem to have any idea how they would, where's the money to come to fix the buildings that our students are already in. Just one of many questions I have. And that's it for now.
Erika, send those questions to your representatives.
All right. Mr. Butler.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Okay. I actually made a couple of notes to remind myself what to ask you folks about. And so I'd like to just go down through them. Before I start, Mr. Christie said that all the information to do with the governor's plan is on the district website. And I don't see any information at all, the video or anything, any of what Mrs. Russell's collecting from V.S.A. So do you have like an intranet where you're sharing information at the board level, but not with the public by any chance?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So what was Mr. Christie talking about when he said it was all on the website?
Coach?
Just unmuting. It's in the packet of materials that were submitted for the meeting tonight, and it was also part of the district newsletter, and the links to the governor's proposal was part of the newsletter.
Okay, I haven't read the newsletter yet, and I don't think I saw anything in the meeting materials that you circulated that was to do with the governor's education plan, but I could be wrong. But I guess I would argue that you should carve out a big chunk of the school board page with a very prominent link on the district homepage to it that collects anything that you happen to come across on the governor's plan for education, so that there is a place that all district residents can go to and understand that this is a fairly complete set of the information as it exists day by day as things accumulate. So I'd really like to see you do something like that. But I've got a few questions. One is, has the board taken any steps to inform staff of what's being considered in order to solicit their feedback? So when I say staff, I think I probably mean mostly the teaching staff, but has there been any actual step taken to make sure that every teacher in the district is aware of what's going on? I suspect most of them have gotten some of it through the grapevine, if no other way. But it would be nice to know that every teacher is being engaged in the discussion at our district level. And then, has the board communicated with parents and the larger community about the proposal? You just mentioned that you've got links in the district newsletter. And frankly, I haven't read the newsletter yet. So if there's anything in there about the governor's plan, I haven't seen it because I haven't looked at that newsletter yet. But that newsletter probably isn't read by people who don't have kids in the schools right now. And I'm painting with too broad a brush perhaps, but I think you need to do a better job of communicating to the larger community what's going on with the governor's plan, and at least make people aware that they need to make themselves aware of what's up. has the board received any feedback from the community or from the teaching staff or staff on the impact that any individual sees to the district? And I asked that question. I wrote to every one of you individually several weeks ago, and I have yet to get a response from any of you. So I don't know if you haven't read it, didn't receive my email, whether it's in a junk file somewhere, or whether you're just not going to respond. But it would be nice to know that if the community is reacting to this plan and communicating their thoughts to you, that you're consolidating all that information so that it can be communicated upstream to the V.S.A and the Superintendent's Association and whoever else might be representing us in what's going on. And then I don't know what the State School Boards Association is doing. Apparently Mrs. Russell is engaged with them all the time, but I don't know, is everything that she's doing being communicated to the rest of you? And are you communicating back and forth about that so that she's representing the district's position? Or are we just relying on her having knowledge of what the district's position will be and representing the district there? It seems like the board should be having a discussion tonight, instructing her as to certain points that you want her to make sure are presented at the state level or explored at the state level. And I think I'll probably stop there and just close by pleading with you to involve the community, get our other elected representatives. We've got a senator and another representative that should have been invited to tonight's meeting to engage with the board in a discussion about the impact of the governor's plan on our community. It's really scary what's being proposed. You know, going from 119, I guess it is, school districts to 5 is really pretty scary. I looked at that map that's proposed, and it takes everything from Norwich to the Massachusetts line, west to the Green Mountains, and calls it a school district. 11 or 12,000 students estimated, and you know, any number of smaller school districts bulldozed away and combined. You know, where are we going to go to attend a school board meeting? You know, the logical center is somewhere south of Springfield. You don't want to drive from Wilder to Hartford High School tonight. You're going to drive to Springfield to attend a meeting. I think you've probably proven tonight that we're not quite at the point where technology supports a remote meeting very well. I just am not ready to see us go from over 100 school districts to 5. If somebody had some rational basis for consolidation, I could be supportive of it. But in my mind, consolidation doesn't mean we close up all the local schools and ship the kids somewhere else, or we keep the schools local, but they're now state schools or a big regional district school, and we have no say over how the buildings are kept up, what the kids are taught, how they're fed, you know, what kind of extracurriculars are available to them. There's just any number of unanswered questions. And is it really going to save us money? Can you imagine what the cost is going to be to create 5 districts out of 100 and some districts? The dislocation, the bus contracts that are going to have to be canceled and bought out, the buildings closed and disposed of, new space built to accommodate consolidation. You know, I used to be on the Sharon School Board. I was on the board when we decided to build the new Sharon Elementary School years ago. And they're getting ready to put an addition on that building now. But in the grand scheme of things, when you glom Stratford and Sharon together and probably ship all the kids to South Royalton, what are you going to do with that brand new building that they're about to embark on? And by the way, Sharon is in a different regional district than Hartford. So all those Sharon kids that come to Hartford High that bring tuition money to Hartford, they're going to go away. So,
Yes, these are just a few of the questions. And if you remember the last round of consolidation, the amount of acrimony in terms of who ended up with the school district, how you got to decide things was unbelievable.
It's probably unlikely that any of the Hartford schools would just be automatically closed and thrown away. Perhaps White River, but look at the Newton School in Stratford and the Sharon Elementary School. Those schools are the absolute heart of those two communities. Nothing happens in Stratford that doesn't revolve around Newton Elementary. And the likelihood of that school surviving this consolidation is about zero. It's not just going to impact the schools, it's going to kill local communities all over the state.
So I personally totally agree with you. We need to do a better job of communicating this. I do think that having a space on the web page where things are gathered together and are easy to find and it's prominently displayed is a good idea, but that's not my decision by myself. And if I may, I am equally concerned about what the Trump administration is potentially doing with the Department of Education, and that is quite likely to have direct multi-million-dollar impacts on what we can do in this district.
Well, by the time they close the Department of Education, the $185 million that Phil Scott thinks he's going to save statewide by imposing a 5-district plan for the whole state is going to go away.
Yes.
We get a lot more than $185 million from the federal government for public school education. And if that goes away, then that's a bigger problem than figuring out whether Newton School's staying open or Sharon's staying open, frankly.
All right. Thank you. It looks like Mary Gannon has got her hand raised.
Yes. Hi, Peter. Can folks hear me?
We
Yes,
can.
Mary.
Okay, great. Just quickly, I know it's late, so I'm going to try and just keep to my 2 minutes. And I really appreciate Mr. Bartler's comments because some of what I want to share is very much and aligned with that. So some of you know that I work as an educational equity support person across the state in some different districts. I have worked with Hartford. I'm engaged with a couple of places right now. I also chair the education committee for the NAACP for the Windham County branch. And part of our work has been trying to really listen carefully to how districts are, wrestling with the uptick and the increased visibility around the cases of racial and other kinds of harassment that are happening to our students. So one angle on this that I think, and I know you all well, having worked with you, so this won't be lost on you. But I feel like one of the angles on this that we could be taking as community members, as parents, as people who care about the state and our kids, is to also look at places in the proposal that don't really redress or address the ongoing harm that's happening to children from all different walks of life. And these are issues that we all know have been going on for decades in the state. And what I looked for when I read the governor's proposal, and to be honest, I was not surprised to not find it, was that there's nothing in it, and Saunders does nothing as well around addressing how we think about school culture and climate issues in relationship to this kind of education reform. We don't talk, there's nothing in there about mental health. There's nothing in there about wellness. There's nothing in there about, the fact that ongoing, I mean, since the report came out in Chair Christie knows this, I can't remember the date, but the racial harassment data that's been collected by the AOE and the state and the Human Rights Commission since the early 2000s and even into the 90s, specifically speaks to the ongoing racialized harassment of our students. And we know that the Human Rights Commission, has a wait list now for families and students who are looking for support around that. So I think that's one angle. The other thing I just want to say is I've been listening closely also to the commission. So thank you, Caty, for raising that. And Garrett, in your one of your questions or comments about the commission, part of, or maybe it was about the proposal. What's become clear for me, and I'm sure for others who are watching this intently, is a lot of this is smoke and mirrors. And I'm just going to say that. I do feel like part of the strategy for Saunders and Scott was to throw this plan out, knowing that there was going to be a lot of pushback without the details. And then, there'll be this scurrying, for example, I'm following the Rural Community School Alliance, which is another very strong group, which will actually be hiring a lobbyist soon to be up in Montpelier. They have a press conference happening on February 20th. I'm following those folks. And, we're working hard in that alliance to also really speak to, as you said, Peter, the topography, the rural community schools, and the impact on the communities when we lose those places. So I just wanted to, put my 2 cents in. I appreciate how we're all putting our nose to the grindstone on this, but I do feel, particularly with that commission, that I don't think there's any influence from the commission. I don't think there's going to be. I'm watching that. They just hired a community engagement person, but it's almost too late. And I think what we need, and I would say this to Mr. Butler and to other people in all the communities. I was in Brattleboro last night having the same conversation with their school board. We have got to come out into the streets. People have to, parents, community members need to start showing up, following these meetings. I know it's hard when people are working, but go to the AOE website. All of the information that folks were asking for tonight is on that AOE website. Anyway, thank you all very much. I just wanted to say hello and let you know that I'm still engaged and hoping that we can bring some common ground to some of the reform that we know needs to happen.
Thanks, Mary.
Right, let's see.
Mrs. Potter.
Thanks, Mary.
Let's see. It looks like Jeremy Warren is wanting to say something, and I think he had been that after that, Janet Potter.
Hey y'all. Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of stick up for the board. I'm running for school board. I don't know if that's known or not. I think it's unopposed, which is a concern, right? But I also think that it's unfair to put all of the pressure on this board for the lack of involvement in the community. Like, if the community is not willing to educate themselves into what's going on in the public, or with the current administrations, that it really shouldn't fall on this board. This is going to be a second job for all of us. In some cases, it's a third job. And so I think that we're going to do the best that we can. But at the end of the day, like, it's really up to the public to suffer their lack of involvement at this point. In my concern, I have 2 students at 2 different schools in 2 different Hartford schools. My best interest is in my kids. It's in our students. It's in our schools. And at the end of the day, it's up to the public to really support our schools, our teachers, our students. And unfortunately, it's going to cost money, right? We know that we have aging schools, which have, hazardous materials in them. But at the end of the day, it's money. It's going to come down to money. And it's great that, we're looking at potentially looking at grants, bonds, future lawsuits. But I'm looking at Peter and saying that, like, litigation takes a long time, and you can hope in one hand, but at the end of the day, I think we need to hold our public accountable. And I agree with Colin in saying that our website is lacking, our communication is lacking, our technology is lacking. I've recently moved back. This is new to me. I'm used to fast-paced meetings. This has gone on really long, but I think it's important that we hear these concerns and we look for ways to make them better. But at the end of the day, if the public is not involved, we don't really have much to stand on. And so I want to really stand up for the board, for going, for doing what they do. But at the end of the day, if the public is not involved, if the public is not educating themselves with what the current administrations are suggesting or proposing, then we're, as a potential future board member, our hands are literally going to be tied. And so I want to give respect to the current board, the past boards, but I want to encourage anybody that's in the public and listening to get involved and reach out to your government officials, and get involved, because this is going to get worse. Thanks, all.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Janet Potter. And just to everybody know,
Thanks, Jen.
after Ms. Potter speaks, I'm going to transition from the governor's plan to public comments. So if there are other issues that people wish to bring up. Ms. Potter?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just a question, because I might not be understanding this about the governor's proposal is that it's going from, and Google may be wrong here, but saying there's about 80 supervisory unions in the state. So I think that was my understanding, is it wasn't about closing schools. It was about consolidating administration. And just looking at our last budget, we have a 200,000 almost for the board and 500,000 for the superintendent. I don't know all what's in there, but that's 700,000 for us times, and this is not clear math, 75 unions that would be closed. That'd be a savings right there of $52 million. I'm just saying what we are doing in education is not sustainable. My taxes went up a lot last year, and my income, and I think a lot of people are feeling that, my income did not match that, nor did my husband's. So I don't think this is about schools closing. I think it's about looking at, we're spending $26,000 per year and we don't have students that are meeting basic reading and math standards. So my hope is, and maybe the math is off, and maybe that's too optimistic, but my hope is that we'll have more student-facing positions to address how far behind our students are. So I guess that's, if there's some flaw in the logic, please help me understand that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. And so now we're public comments. Are there other issues that people would like to raise?
Zachary Scott has his hand up.
Okay. Zachary?
Yes, good evening. Zach Scott, Hartford. I had emailed board members asking for clarification around the superintendent search committee and how that was selected. I wasn't able to be present at the last board meeting, and so I didn't get to ask that question, but can I get some explanation on how committee members were selected if it wasn't done in a public meeting?
the selection process that was agreed upon by the board was is that each of the constituent groups would select their own individual, not the board selecting random community members to participate. So uh, the teachers submitted, their candidate. The administrative council submitted their candidate. The special educators, submitted their candidate. Each of the schools had an opportunity to request, parent, the parent involvement members, for the committee. I don't have the matrix in front of me, but that's how it was selected. We put the request out to the individual entities and asked them to provide, uh, the candidates. You'll see in the meeting minutes from last meeting, who those folks were. And
Yeah,
they were.
I see who they are. I disagree that that's. I mean, I submitted my name to the superintendent's office, social worker. She was the point person on that.
Right.
So I submitted as a community member and as a parent. There was no communication with any administrators in a parent role. So
but the thing is, the board did not get involved. We wanted to separate ourselves from that, so, for that express reason. And that's why the point of contact, was given, that role as the, let's say, the person that would bring all of that together.
So, okay. So that doesn't, I don't know. The process seems exceptionally flawed.
Well, no, go ahead.
I guess I'm not really clear if Miss Sutton is submitting herself as a potential candidate. So if she is, I think that creates a lot of concern on my part that many of her direct reports are part of this committee. That I know the student member, I think she's wonderful, but her parent is a district employee. I think you've got a disproportionate of people influenced by Miss Sutton. If she's in fact submitting her name, which I don't know that she is or not. And I'm not saying she's not the best candidate that we could find. I'm all about processes, and I'm concerned about this process. And as I wrote in my email, and I'll put this in public comments now, but there's very few of us that have regularly participated in this district-wide process of a school board meeting consistently throughout the year. And so I was a bit perplexed that no one spoke to me about participating after I submitted my name. And I think that
I'm sorry, Zach, but the board stayed out of that part of the process just for that reason.
The board's job is to work at the benefit of the entire community. And it is not the superintendent's job to create a committee.
No, it wasn't her job. She was not assigned or had anything to do with any of that selection process. And that, you noticed, I came right back at you with, very strongly, because that was part of the reason we did it the way we did, and had the point of contact working with the consulting firm to generate that list. The board gave a list to the point of contact, identifying who we wanted represented on that committee.
I remember that meeting. I was there, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then the board stepped back so that we would not be involved in that part of the process on purpose, Zach. You know, I'm sorry that
Well, I know that the board doesn't like critical feedback. I'm trying to give it to you in an objective way.
Yeah,
and
go for
I
it.
don't think that this was a process that removed that influence enough. And I would encourage for anyone who might be around whenever another superintendent search committee is formed, that they reflect on this in the future. I'm certainly not going to lose sleep over not being part of a committee that's going to have a lot of work to do.
Well, Zach, I'm sorry. And there was no intent on the part of the board, to exclude or include anyone in particular.
I would rather the board be part of that decision making than the superintendent's subordinate. That's my point.
Okay, point taken.
You're elected, and that's how community members can have some control of the decision making. But when you hand off your decision making to superintendent office staff, then it gets a little muddy.
All right.
Thanks,
thank you, Zach. Let's see. Colin Butler and then Janet Potter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Jonathan brought up a couple of times something to do with the spending of the bond issue money. I think Mr. Christie did as well, suggesting that perhaps it was the backstop for the spending on the remediation of the PCBs if other funding sources failed. And I've got a little bit of a broader concern. It's that before town meeting, before the vote, there was the description of a committee of citizens of the community that was going to be formed to I don't know, advise and consent or observe how the money was going to be spent, which projects were going to take priority, and so forth. And there's actually a letter from the previous superintendent on the school board page that describes what the makeup of that committee was going to be. Can somebody tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think that committee was ever formed.
I've not heard anything.
I can actually speak to that. This is Jeanette Potter. So I was the secretary of that committee. So this goes in nicely, Colin, to my open comments was what is happening with that committee, because there was a committee formed with, I think Erika Fallon is on this call. I don't know she's also on the committee. We met 3 times or 4 times. I'm the secretary of that committee. There was timeline set and an RFP that was going to go out. I have emailed for clarification and received none from the superintendent's office. And I know that Tom left at just as that it got formed and then Tom left. So there might be some questioning of that. But yes, there is a committee that was formed. It met 3 or 4 times over the last summer. And then we have not heard anything despite emails to the superintendent's office and the director of building and grounds, who did not attend any of those meetings over the summer. So I would love to have more information on how that's moving forward.
Well, I think you may have just made it worse for me, because I'm the open records, open meetings nut, and if you've been meeting as recently as this past summer, where are the notices for the meetings posted? Where are the minutes for the meetings posted? What's the makeup of the committee? There isn't even a committee listed, as far as I know, with people's names associated with it. So I'm still concerned that there is not the committee that the previous superintendent described in I think it was an April letter. I'm just, there's probably been some spending, maybe a lot of spending of that bond money, and I don't know that the public is aware of what projects are being undertaken and where the money's going and who has decided on which project to go
Colin,
first.
the committee is not aware, to my understanding, unless I'm left out of that.
Well, that's a problem, I think. Does anybody on the school board want to say that there is or is not a standing committee that's working on this? And if the answer is yes, there is, then where's the evidence of it? Where are the meeting notices? Where are the meeting minutes?
Can you hear me to let me weigh in here?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Jonathan Garthwaite, Facilities Director. I can't speak to whatever committee may have been formed when Tom DeBalzi was here. I wasn't included in that committee. I can speak to where that previous effort landed. Again, I wasn't part of that original committee. Where I came in this fall was the chair of that committee, the previous board member. I had not heard any progress from that group for quite a while, so I reached out to her and asked where things stood. She indicated that she could no longer be involved in that effort, and forwarded to me the RFP that group had put together. And then I discussed that with the superintendent and took the work that they did. And it is now in front of the district's attorney. He's going through some of the comments that were made on the terms and conditions part of that to get that back on track for an RFP for consulting services to go out related to planning. That's my understanding, was that committee was formed specifically to develop that RFP, which they did. As far as a committee involved in oversight of the actual work that was done, if that was intended to be formed, that was not something that I was involved in. My work has been specifically related to the items that were related to the bond. If that was something that was a mandate with the previous superintendent, I can't speak to that. I can say that the work that the RFP committee did resulted in an RFP that is now in front of the attorney and for review and needs to get out for proposals.
So I'm just going to push back on this. I really want the board to look into this. Jonathan, that is not true. You are on those meetings, the invites from April forward, in the meetings for the facilities that you did not attend. So I have screenshots of all of that. So to say that you were not involved or did not know about that is a blatant lie.
I think we're just misunderstanding. I don't have any of that in front of me. going back to the beginning with the, this goes back quite a while now. My understanding was that committee was formed specifically to inform the draft of an RFP. I was told at that time that I might have an advisory role and would be called in, but never was. And that's okay. Like, I think, the last communication I had was related to, what I got from the previous chair was the work that committee, the product that committee put together. Happy to revisit it. I don't know. I guess I'm a little unclear. I think there's two conversations going on. One is about the committee that I was aware of to inform the creation of an RFP. And I think, Jeanette, that's what you're referring to. If there was another committee that was meant to be formed as like a guiding or a steering committee, I think what you may be referring to, Colin, is when the bond was being developed, there was a group that included myself and Jacob and Doug Heaviside Sr. I believe Jeff Marino was involved, that worked to put together the format and priority of the bond proposal.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's the committee that Sarah Campbell was involved in, correct?
She was involved in that, and then when the bond passed, my understanding is she was tapped. That committee existed to create the bond, and it did. When the bond passed, and there was the discussion of creating an RFP at that time, and again, I'm speaking without notes here, so forgive me if I misspeak a little bit, but my understanding at that time was that RFP group was formed by Superintendent DeBalsi to inform the creation of an RFP specifically for a consulting study and catchment study that was a significant part of that bond. At the time, the conversation with the superintendent was where my role is more specific, or at least in that moment, it's more specific to planning the bricks and sticks aspect of the bond. Sarah was tapped to head up that group and did so. The only reason that I became involved at all was when I didn't hear anything about it for a while and reached out to say what's going on, and she had for personal reasons to bow out. So if there was more to that, I believe it. Jeanette, to your comment about me being in my name being on there, what I was directed to do at that time was simply advisory when called in, and I wasn't. So
okay, that could have been cleared up if people would have responded to emails from me. So I'll just pass everything on to the board, but I am very concerned that there was, like Colin said, we were on a facilities committee about the bond. It wasn't, the RFP was the first step in that process. And then when people asked about it, it was either they were not responded to, or there was some pretty abrasive responses from administration about that. So, yeah, I'm concerned. It's a lot of money, and I heard tonight that it's starting to be spent. And the people that were tapped for that committee that had lots of ideas, we have documentation of that, of everything. Apparently those were not even taken into consideration, which really frustrates me as a person who then wasted their time. My time is valuable, and it was essentially wasted with 8 other people's time.
And if I can speak again, this is Colin Butler. I opened up the link on the school board webpage just now. This is not the committee that worked before the passage of the bond. This is a committee that was to be formed after. And it says seeking applicants from the town of Hartford serve on a FY25 School Facilities Planning Committee. And the committee will consist of community members, school district staff, parks and rec member, school superintendent, district level school administrator. It doesn't say anything about developing an RFP for planning. It says that it will be a facilities planning committee. So I took that to mean that that committee would be intimately involved in the planning of the spending of $21 million. And I've heard nothing about anybody being appointed to that committee. I don't recall anything at the board table where the board appointed people to that committee. I didn't know the committee existed. And if it does exist, again, where are the agendas? Where are the meeting notices? Where are the minutes? You know, this district really plays fast and loose on open meetings, open records, and it's going to come to a stop. I'm set for now. Thanks a lot.
All right. And let's see. All right. So Jeremy Warren has his hand up, and after he speaks, we will go on to the consent agenda because it is getting late. Mr. Warren?
Nope, I just never hit the lower hand button. Peter, you can move on for me.
All right, thank you very much. Moving out of public comments into consent agenda. Are there any appointments, resignations, retirements that we need to be aware of?
Yep, we did receive an appointment of Barbara Weikelman, who will be joining Dothenbrook in the 5th grade position. That's so that's an appointment. We've got a resignation, Michael Coughlin at the Hartford High School, and a retirement of Marion Nugent from the middle school.
All right. Does anybody have anything to say about the minutes? Any corrections, edits? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion having been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing nothing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you. The next meeting of the board is on 3/12/2025, the reorganization meeting after we have voted for a new school board. And Garrett, I believe it's your turn to do the meeting evaluation.
Let me find it. All right. Board was prepared for meeting. I guess I would say needs improvement today. Board's time was spent on ends, not means. Satisfactory. Each board member was given opportunity to participate. Satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness. Satisfactory. Board adhered to Robert's Rules of Order. Satisfactory. Board adhered to its adopted governance style. It emphasized outward vision. It encouraged diversity in viewpoints. It exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail. It maintained distinction between board and staff roles. It used collective decision-making. Looked to the future. Satisfactory. And that's it.
All right. At this point, is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion having been made to adjourn, it's non-debatable. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you very much. And I apologize for the technical issues. Have a good evening, all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Peter.
Mhm.